I want to first provide an overview of how motivation, ability, and opportunity interact to predict consumer behavior. Let's take the example of a consumer who decides she wants to buy a smartwatch. When an ad for this product comes on, she'll pay attention because it's personally relevant and consistent with her consumer goals. Imagine, though, that the ad discusses the features at a really technical level. She doesn't have the ability to understand it even though she's motivated to do so. Or imagine that a friend walks in the room right as the ad is playing and asks her a question. Then her opportunity to understand the ad is diminished. In order for the ad to influence a consumer, she has to have motivation, the ability, and then the opportunity to process. So that's in the context of ad processing consumer behavior. Relatedly, let's say this consumer decides to go to Best Buy to buy a particular smartwatch. So she's motivated to do so. This meets her, it's personally relevant. She has a need that she's identified. She wants to buy a smartwatch. But let's say when she gets there, she realizes that the model she wants to buy is too expensive for her budget. So she's got limited financial resources, limited ability. Alternatively, let's say that the model she wants to buy is out of stock. So her opportunity to purchase it is diminished. So here's another example where we've got the three factors of motivation, ability, and opportunity interacting to predict consumer behavior. I wanted to identify the difference between ability and opportunity because students sometimes mix this up. I wanted to clarify that ability has to do with factors that are internal to the consumer or consumer specific, whereas opportunity often has more to do with factors that are external to the consumer. However, it all starts with motivation. If the consumer is not sufficiently motivated to act, then ability and opportunity won't make a difference. So we're going to spend some more time right now focusing more on motivation. So consumer motivation is an internal state that drives people to identify and buy products or services that fulfill conscious and unconscious needs or desires. To use a term that is not in your book, but that you will all recognize, consumers are motivated to pursue offerings that create value for them. When consumers evaluate a product or service, they weigh its perceived value against the asking price. In the field and in practice, marketers have generally focused much of their time and energy on managing the price side of the equation, since raising prices can immediately boost profits. But actually, that's the easy part. Pricing usually consists of managing a relatively small set of numbers, and pricing analytics and tactics are highly evolved. What consumers truly value, however, can be difficult to pin down and psychologically complicated. The success of marketing and leadership teams depends on their ability to manage value or devise ways to deliver more of it, whether functional, like saving time, reducing cost, or emotional, reducing anxiety, providing entertainment. The amount and nature of value in a particular product or service always lies in the eye of the beholder, of course. This is why we have a differentiated marketplace, why person X prefers a Toyota Corolla and person Y prefers a Ford Mustang. It is critical for marketers to understand and develop products that tap into their target market's perception of value. In the language of Chapter 2, it is key that marketers provide offerings that align with consumers' motivations, their needs, wants, and goals. Your book identified Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a starting point. Maslow argued that human actions arise from an innate desire to fulfill needs ranging from the very basic, like security, warmth, food, and rest, to the complex, like self-esteem and altruism. Almost all marketers today, and probably you, are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy. However, more recently, a group of researchers have extended this hierarchy, specifically focusing on people's behavior as it relates to product and services, and identified 30 elements of value, fundamental attributes that tap into modern consumers' most essential wants and needs. So we can see this displayed here, this new pyramid containing the essential elements of value. These elements fall into four basic categories: functional, down on the bottom, moving up to emotional, life-changing, and social impacts. Some of these elements are more inwardly focused, primarily addressing consumers' personal needs. For example, perhaps you're familiar with the famous statement by the founder of cosmetics company Revlon. In the factory, we make cosmetics. In the store, we sell hope. In the store, we sell. Others are more outwardly focused, helping consumers interact in or navigate the external world. The functional element organizes is central to the Container Store and to its TurboTax because both help consumers deal with complexities in their world. Apple products are associated with high quality, design aesthetics, and badge value. Take a minute to think about the value provided by some of your favorite products and the underlying needs they solve. Importantly, what people value in products varies by industry. Some research has been done to examine what are some of the most important needs or desired elements per industry. You can see by looking at this list here that quality is an essential component at the top of most lists. However, in a grocery context, for example, people are more likely to value variety and sensory appeal, whereas with a TV service provider or streaming service, people are more likely to value fun and entertainment. So, as a recap, consumers possess fundamental needs and marketers try to create products and services to meet those needs, to create value. Even when a consumer perceives value in a product, however, there are always risks associated with consumption. This is the other side of the motivation coin. Consumers are motivated to pursue options that meet their needs, but balance that pursuit with avoidance of potential risks. So now we're going to spend a little bit of time focusing on how marketers can attempt to forestall risk. Let's go back to the smartwatch example. Imagine you're thinking about buying a new brand of smartwatch. What are some of the risks you might identify? Why might you not buy this watch? Well, for one, you might be worried that it won't work once you buy it. This is known as functional risk. It's a pretty basic form of risk. Will the product do or not do what it promises to do? You might also be worried that if you buy the watch and it doesn't work, you won't be able to get your money back. This is known as financial risk and is associated with monetary loss. People don't like to lose money. Alternatively, you might get the watch and it works, but it might be really complicated to figure out how to use it. It might take a lot of time and effort just to get it up and running. This is known as temporal risk and is associated with wasting time. So this is less likely in the context of a smartwatch, but imagine that there have been a few high publicity cases of smartwatches shocking their users, creating some kind of adverse effect or pain associated with use. This would be a case of physical risk, causing injury because one has used a product. All right, now let's imagine it's not you that are considering buying the product, but someone who is in her 70s or 80s. One reason that people resist adopting new technology is because of the psychological risk that it can pose. The risk that the new product might make someone feel dumb or embarrassed. So imagine you've spent your whole life not using technology or smartwatches, smartphones, and you get one, and you feel embarrassed that you can't learn how to use it. Alternatively, let's say our potential smartwatch user is friends with people who mostly avoid using such technology. Basically, they live under a rock, and they believe that technology has a negative impact on people's lives. So this person, while she might be interested in using it, is worried about the opinions of her friends and how they might judge her for getting one. This is known as social risk. Marketers often work actively to increase consumers' perceptions of value, as we mentioned before, as well as reduce perceived risk. So what are some examples of the ways that marketers can do this that come to your mind? Take a minute to think about that. Maybe you've seen money-back guarantees associated with products. So when people buy something, if they're not satisfied, they can get their money back. This is one way to reduce financial risk. or 30-day risk-free trial, so people can try the product, try to minimize the functional risk, identifying that the product actually works, as well as minimize any type of financial risk. In the case where physical risk is possible, such as with cars, marketers often tout crash test ratings or the efficacy of brakes. To forestall temporal or psychological risks, marketers may promise that their products are easy to use or that there are easily accessible resources to help people use the product should they struggle, such as a really intensive customer service line. The framework provided here in this table can help you consider the types of risks that might be relevant to a specific marketing context. The next step, of course, involves developing messaging or programs to help reduce consumer perceived risk in an accurate and ethical way. You can't promise things that aren't true, in order to reduce any barriers associated with consuming a product or service. So again, just to recap, coming back up to the top here with our motivation, ability, and opportunity framework, motivating consumers by understanding their needs and making things seem personally relevant or addressing consumers' personal relevant questions and reducing perceived risk is going to motivate consumer behavior. However, consumers must have the appropriate abilities and opportunity in order to enact that behavior for it to actually occur.